So as our Connie Kim just reported, financial regulators will conduct a second special investigation into the three major credit card companies swept up in Korea's largest ever data leak. Now, there was a confirmation of an additional breach or damage late last week following reassurances from the government back in January that there would not be any additional impact for the public. So how did this happen? Well, for a closer look at the issue, we are joined live in the studio by Dr. Byoung-joo, the head of KL&P Consulting, and of course our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, this additional damage that we're talking about, can we call this a second breach?
Yes and no, in the sense that there is a subtle difference here. Basically, what was announced back in January was that this manager at a credit rating agency actually stole this data, and then he sold it to an advertisement agency executive. And they said that was the end of the story. That's what public prosecutors were saying and the financial regulators were saying. But now, last Friday, we learned that there is an additional development in that story, meaning that this advertisement agency manager and the person who stole the data actually resold for the second time to other people and other companies that are engaged in lending business. So this is extension of the boundary itself in terms of how widely the information has been sold or used illegally here. So the boundary itself has increased. As Connie Kim reported, we're talking about 80 million different data sets, data pieces, out of 104 million that they were talking about back in January. So this is about 80% of all that had been affected in January. At that time, when the authorities were saying that they were certain that that was the end of the story, changing hands from the credit rating agency manager to the advertisement agency executive, a lot of people were suspicious because this is not like a national treasure or art piece we're talking about. When you get hold of those, that doesn't mean that they were not copied. Digital products can be copied without a trace here. So public were wondering whether this could be really credible. And as the skepticism went, exactly as we were suspicious, now we are learning that there were other copying and then changing of hands that took place. So indeed, there is a serious damage to the credibility of the government in dealing this issue as a whole. For now, what we learn is that the names and then registration number, address, telephone numbers, and then work information, and as well as credit rating for individuals have been leaked or resold to these individuals. So government is saying because passwords of these financial accounts were not handed over, there's no risk at this point, they're saying, for people copying like a credit card information and then using them in a fake name and stuff. But once again, because the credibility has been damaged, I think the public remains quite skeptical about this.
Right, just the fact that the password had not been leaked, that's no reassurance to us at all, to the public.
Exactly.
So what went wrong exactly? I mean, why so much reassurance back in January just to break the public trust now?
Overall, lack of understanding about how these digital products work in the minds of the top decision makers. We had a big controversy over the Deputy Prime Minister Hyun Ok-seok's comment, right, about consumers having agreed to this, which was not really the case. And now the understanding that this digital information can be copied without a trace, that was a critical point. But the prosecutors and the financial authorities overlooked that, and they said, well, since these people who were arrested confessed, we will have to take those words at face value. That's what prosecutors were saying. And then since prosecutors were saying that there was no more reselling of this information, financial regulators were saying, well, we have to take those words of the prosecutors. So now basically what's happening is finger pointing going on, blaming other people about how that decision of assuring the public came about. But the thing is, in a way, I do understand the public policymakers' sense of urgency at that time. In financial sector, rumors can create a lot of difficulties and chaos in a way. So they were quite desperate to, put off the fire of the possible spread of this kind of rumors and panic and stuff. So that's credible. But the thing is, what they should have said was, at this point, we do not have an evidence that this information was resold. That's what they should have said, rather than saying, we are quite confident that there was no resale involved here. So that's why they kind of undermined the overall trust of the public and made a critical mistake while they were kind of like really under attack of this anxiety attack for fear and rumor and stuff.
Right, because panic is no good news for
in
the
financial
market.
sector,
of
right.
course not. Now, excuse me, it was just a week ago that the government announced this, what they called comprehensive measures for prevention for future leaks. So what now? I mean, does the government have any more options or any more action that they can take in order to, in response to this additional leak?
The answer would be not really, because as we discussed before about last week, the announcement of March 10th itself came out after 3 rounds of delays because of the industry lobbying and all these concerns on the business side and stuff. Government had a great difficulty in coming up with a comprehensive announcement. So we are not expecting any additional announcement of additional safety measures here. Rather, the government is saying now they're focusing on those possible victims of this resale of their personal information. And they're saying these credit card companies are contacting those people whose information have been leaked. But because the amount is so large, I wonder, myself is included here once again, as I was back in January, and I don't know how they can actually reach out to so many people in this case. So once again, continuously there is this question about the credibility about what the authorities are saying.
Now, excuse me, experts talk about the various systemic problems or shortcomings behind these accidents. Now, fundamentally speaking, what are some of the most important ones that we should focus on?
There are several fundamental issues. For the interest of time, let me just touch upon just one thing. That is, so far, what's been happening in Korea is government and the consumers who are taking the responsibility, pretty much. Meaning that, when we set up a financial online transactional financial services, we had to install all of these programs, right, to protect the data on our side as a consumers. And then government laid out all these guidelines, detailed guidelines that financial institutions had to follow. What does that mean? What that means is financial institutions, as long as they follow those guidelines and require customers to install all these protective measures, they are pretty much free from taking the responsibility, basically. They can argue, well, we've done all that has been required, so we are okay. Now, experts are saying that needs to be changed. Government should get rid of those guidelines, give greater freedom, if you will, or right to for these corporations to do whatever they think are necessary, give them freedom, and then ask for their accountability when things go wrong. So that fundamental shift, overall orientation of this kind of online transactions need to be taking place, experts are saying. In that case, just like other advanced economies, businesses will be very much interested in, protecting themselves. So they'll come up with various different kind of measures, not necessarily uniform measures, but different measures to protect themselves. And that's the way to go. In order to make that happen, what now should take place at the lawmaking body, legislature, National Assembly, is to introduce new laws for class action and the punitive damage, claims that would be made possible by this new law. So those kind of actions are expected. It should take place at the legislature, but we do know at the legislature there are a lot of business lobbyists that are asking for less burden and minimum amount of burden. So that's the dilemma.
And therefore, this cannot happen overnight. So it will take some time.
Right.
All right, Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, thank you so much for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.